Hello, and welcome to another video on grammar in the English language. This is one of our videos on how to use modifiers, that is, adverbs and adjectives. This video specifically focuses on misplaced and dangling modifiers. To review the forms and use of degrees and comparison, watch our video on degree of comparison by clicking the card in the top right corner. By the end of the video, you should have a better idea of how to identify misplaced and dangling modifiers and ways to eliminate them from your writing. First, we will look at misplaced modifiers. Here is our first sentence. I saw a duck and a goose on the way to school. In this sentence, the modifying prepositional phrase on the way to school has been incorrectly placed and, therefore, modifies the wrong items in the sentence. As the modifier directly follows the nouns duck and goose, it seems as though the duck and goose were going to school. Of course, it was I who was going to school. To correct this error, we should place the modifier as close to the word it modifies as possible. In this example, we should place it at the beginning of the sentence. So it reads, on the way to school, I saw a duck and a goose. Now, the modifier correctly modifies I. A second example. In the coop, I watched the chickens. Again, the modifier in this sentence, in the coop, is misplaced and modifies an incorrect word in the sentence. Because the modifier is directly before I, it seems as though I was in the coop, which is not true. The chickens were in the coop, and I was watching them from outside. Again, to correct this error, we should place the modifier as close to the word it modifies as possible. Here, we should place it at the end of the sentence. So it reads, I watched the chickens in the coop. Now the modifier correctly modifies the chickens. So, to help avoid misplaced modifiers, place modifiers as close as possible to the words they are intended to modify. Time for a comprehension check. Here is a third example sentence. Clucking and crowing, the farmer fed the hungry chickens. Again, the modifier, here clucking and crowing, is misplaced. The placement of the modifier makes it seem as though the farmer was making animal noises. Again, we should move the modifier close to the word intended to be modified. This time, some revision is required to create the sentence. The farmer fed the hungry chickens that were clucking and crowing. To position the modifier correctly, we have created the adjective clause that were clucking and crowing. So, we can amend the previously established rule. Add an adjective clause if required. Time for another comprehension check. The final example sentence for misplaced modifiers. I only visit the farm on Saturdays. In this example, the adverb only is positioned incorrectly. As only is placed directly before the predicate visit the farm, it suggests that the only thing that I do on Saturdays is visit the farm. This is not true. I do many things on Saturdays besides visit the farm, but Saturday is the only day on which I go to the farm. To make this clear, I should move only as follows. I visit the farm only on Saturdays. Best practice is to place only directly in front of the word or phrase that it modifies. Time for another quick comprehension check. And now a quick review of misplaced modifiers. Move misplaced modifiers as close as possible to the word they are intended to modify, adding an adjective clause if necessary. Place only directly in front of the word or phrase that it modifies. Now we will move on to dangling modifiers. An example sentence. By caring for animals, empathy and responsibility is learned. In this sentence, we have the modifier at the beginning. But what exactly does it modify? Who does the caring for animals? This is an example of a dangling modifier, in which the modifier does not logically modify any word or phrase in the sentence. To correct this, we need to add a word for the modifier to connect to. And of course, that word should be placed as close as possible to the modifier. We can resolve this error by adding I. Now the sentence reads, by caring for animals, I learn empathy and responsibility. Notice how we have changed the verb from passive voice, is learned, to active voice, learn. A second example. Using a sheepdog, the cows are moved from one field to another. The modifier here, using a sheepdog, seems to modify the cows, but of course cows don't use sheepdogs. There is no other word for the modifier to connect to. This is therefore a dangling rather than a misplaced modifier. To correct this sentence, we can add the user of the sheepdog, the farmer to create the following sentence. Using a sheepdog, the farmer moves the cows from one field to another. Notice again that the verb has changed from the passive are moved to the active move. Another option for correcting the sentence is to eliminate the modifier. We could write, a sheepdog moves the cows from one field to another. So the options for resolving dangling modifiers are to add a word or phrase for the dangling modifier to modify, or to rearrange the sentence to remove the modifier. Time for a final comprehension check. And to recap what we have discussed in this video. Move misplaced modifiers as close as possible to the word they are supposed to modify. Add an adjective clause if required, and place only in front of the word or phrase it modifies. Add a word or phrase for the dangling modifier to modify, or rearrange the sentence to remove the modifier. I hope this video was useful, and thank you again for watching.